Just go out and do it. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait for the perfect deal. Violently execute your good plan today, and tomorrow will be great.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Icon Realty Group, helping home buyers, sellers, and investors in the West Michigan area. Find out more at theiconrealtygroup.com.
Have you ever owned or lived in a haunted house? Have you or your tenants ever encountered unexplained phenomena? If you have any real-life ghost stories, we'd love to hear them. The best will be compiled for a very special Halloween episode. Nothing is too scary or off limits. As long as it happened to you or someone you know, we want to hear about it. Email me at brian@higinvestor.com by Friday, October 6th to share your story.
Hello and welcome to episode 89. My guest today is Gary Hall, the CEO of Dean Arrow. He's a passive income strategist, and he's also the operations manager for West Shore Property Management, which is located in Muskegon, Michigan. Gary is an experienced entrepreneur and real estate investor who focuses on creating passive income through systems, teams, and processes, with a special emphasis in real estate investing. So Gary, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to have you.
You have lived in a lot of different places around the country. You're from Idaho. You lived in other places in between before you came to Muskegon, Michigan. And you also have a big entrepreneurial and business background. Can you fill us in on some of the details?
Okay. I've lived in Idaho, Utah, Texas, and Colorado, as well as Mexico. I lived in Tijuana for a couple years. I have always been interested in business. I've started several companies all the way from when I was 16 forward. I've run businesses in the tech industry, mostly in internet marketing, as well as in the search engine industry back in the web crawler days. As above and beyond that, when I got back into the United States, I wanted to look into passive income. That was my passion. So I wanted to get into real estate and I wanted to get into finance. So I started a company helping businesses find money. I started a company called New Growth Financial, and that company helped businesses get funds. And a lot of those people that were looking for funds were people that were real estate investors because they couldn't get traditional financing. In 2008, things went a little south. That company, the funds weren't out there to invest anymore, so that company went south. So did my real estate investments at that point, and I kind of just had a job, just over broke, for the next 10 years, trying to figure out what I was going to do. I ran a Liberty Tax franchise for a while, and I also ran a internet marketing SEO search engine optimization company as well. Wow,
okay. And were these companies that you had founded or companies that
some founded and some I'd run?
Let's go back to just before the crash when you were helping. It sounds like you were helping real estate investors find the funds to probably do flips, rehabs, flips, that kind of thing.
Correct. So someone would come to me, and this was before 2008, when anyone could go into a bank and just on a signature loan get $50,000 to $100,000 without asking. So if you came into my office, within about a month, you could walk away with $100,000 to $500,000.
Wow. And so were you kind of a loan broker?
Yes.
So you were sourcing money from banks,
private money, all over the place.
Okay. And what kind of investing were you doing yourself?
I was young, so I was still in college at this point as well. And so I decided I wanted to house hack, and I went in business with one of my friends, and we purchased a duplex, lived in the upstairs, and rented out the downstairs.
And that took a hit in the...
That did. One, I was young. My main source of income went under, so I moved back to Colorado to help my father with his business, which was also taking a hit from the recession. That's when I got into Liberty Tax. And my partner did not keep up with the business, and he moved as well to California. And with two people out of the state, we didn't know anything about real estate. It crashed and burned, and we lost that as well.
Okay. So before we really get into the real estate conversation, it's interesting to me that while you're still in college, you're starting your own financial business.
I'm an avid reader, and as I said, I've been in business for myself since I was 16, I believe. So I've always been into that. There was a book, Motorcycle Millionaire, I believe, about a guy who made tons of money. He actually started the Austrian Stock Exchange, and he drove around the entire country on a motorcycle. He teaches business at Harvard, I believe, and the first thing he does in his intro to business class is tell everyone that you should quit college and start a business. You'll learn more there than in school. So I took his advice, and I quit college and started a business, and I learned a ton, made more money than any kid that age deserves to make, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, so you weren't just in college, you quit college to start this business.
Once it took off, and once I was making, the six figures, I quit college. I had that. I could just do it myself.
Wow. And it seems like at the time you were able to jump into an industry that was really thriving, but was also on the precipice because of the bubble and the recession.
Hindsight's 20/20, and I could see it coming a mile away now if it happened again. You could just see that there weren't any controls. There wasn't anyone actually paying attention to what was going on. The people that we were getting loans did not deserve them and had no business with this money.
Mm-hmm. So what do you looking at then versus now, where a lot of people do believe we're on another precipice? Do you share that as well, or do you see differences?
I see a lot of differences. Booms and busts are pretty regular, all the way from the tulip boom way back when. There's always ups and downs. Anytime a market grows faster than then you can make smart choices. People start making unintelligent choices, and then it leads to some sort of disaster or burst. We have corrected a lot of things in the real estate industry, so I don't see that burst coming in real estate. I also don't see that being a huge issue in the next few years. I know there is supposed to be a recession. They're coming 2018, 2020-ish, but West Michigan I don't think is going to get hit very hard with that. And the U.S. as a whole, it's going to be a minor recession, something that most people don't even notice.
So it'll be kind of location dependent or location specific as to where the recession really hurts. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, West Michigan is definitely pretty well situated, but we can't get too comfortable. So let's talk about systems and creating passive income through systems, because you've done this repeatedly. Mm-hmm. And let's focus on the idea of creating the passive income. Talk about the first time you were able to create a business that created passive income for yourself.
So everyone has read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Most people haven't read the second book, which is called Cash Flow Quadrant. The idea that you start off as an employee. You're working, you're trading your dollars for time, or your time for dollars, and you're working for someone else. When you become self-employed, that's what most people think of as an entrepreneur. Oh, I'm going to go start this business. And when you do that, you're still trading your time for dollars. You're just working for yourself and for every other bill you have out there. To be able to get to the point where you get to the next section where you are a business owner, that's where you get other people to work for you. And then above and beyond that is an investor. And as an investor, you have businesses that work for you. So I've always had the desire to get passive income. That's why most people get into real estate. And with that desire for passive income, the ability to leave and do what you want when you want, to not be tied down to having to show up work at a certain time. The first time I truly tried to get to passive, I was running a internet marketing company, a search engine optimization company, and I was doing most of the work myself. It took, being creative, you're in a creative industry, being creative, it might not take a lot of physical labor, but it takes a ton of time. It takes a lot of effort. Half of the work that you do is trash. So most of what you do, you don't get anything out of. So when I'm doing that as a search engine optimization specialist, I was stuck with how much money I could make because I could only service so many clients and actually perform well. So being an entrepreneur and knowing that I want to get out and get into passive income, I began finding and outsourcing who can I take the grunt work and give that to.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Let's make sure that everyone's on the same page. So right now we're talking about a business you started in SEO, search
Correct.
engine optimization. This isn't necessarily about real estate, but it's about you getting to a point where you were doing all the work yourself.
Correct.
And you realize in order to create that passive income, you need to outsource to other people to take a lot of that work off your shoulders.
Yes.
Okay, so just so everyone's up to speed, take it from there.
So I began outsourcing at first in the United States and then also outside of the United States, which I had a little bit of experience with that. We had run a company of about 300 employees in Russia that were doing internet marketing and AdSense before. So with SEO, which is a little bit more technical and a little bit more creative, I was at first leery, but when someone specializes in something and that's what they do all day, every day, no matter where they are, who they are, if they're going to get paid, they're probably better at you than the job if you're jack of all trades. So I began immediately outsourcing, and the more I outsourced, the better the results I was getting and the more people I could service. So I got to the point where I had outsourced first the production level, then the creativity, and then the sales. And I had a business that was running itself and I could check in on every once in a while. I wasn't passionate about it, so I didn't keep up with it. The creativity, the ability to lead and direct it still has to be there. You can't just walk away and not do anything. So I wasn't passionate about it, so I did close that up and shutter it. But it was the first time I realized that if you stop trying to do everything yourself, if you stop trying to maximize the dollars you make out of this sale and this client, and you work on building a system that will work for you, you can really leverage other people. By worrying about how to get them and how to pay them, you can leverage and you'll make more money than you could doing it yourself.
So really the system that you created, it sounds like, it consisted basically of finding other people that you could outsource to. Just take the work that you're doing daily or repetitively and just outsourcing it to as many other people. Was there more to that system? Well,
it sounds simple. It's about looking at your business and breaking down every action that you do and thinking of it like McDonald's. Who does everything from who puts the bun on, who puts the hamburger on, who puts lettuce on? How do you create the system line? How do you take what you do on a daily basis and turn it into tasks? And then how do you separate those tasks out? And how do you find a company that can perform those tasks better than you can perform them? And then once you've found all of those pieces together, you then have to put them in a system, and then you've got to create the communication systems in place where you can make sure that things are getting done, you can communicate quickly, and then you've got to create the checks and balances to be able to say, okay, now this has gone out of whack or that's gone out of whack, so you don't run yourself into the ground. So while it sounds simple, and I think everyone should try and do it as much as possible, everyone should try and outsource some portion of their life. It takes a lot of creativity and a lot of work.
So let's focus on that, and I want to get into how that applies to real estate, because you are the manager of West Shore Property Management. But before we get there, is there another business that you started where you applied the same type of system?
That's the first time. I'd hired other employees before, but I was younger and I was still trying to do as much as I could myself.
Okay, so then you shut that down. Because it sounds like you still, even though you had systematized it, you still need that visionary at the top. You need that person, that heartbeat of the company. And since you didn't have passion for it, you figured, you know what, let's just move on to something I do have passion for.
Yeah, and that industry was becoming much more of a commodity, so the margins were thinner and thinner. So it was a good time to get out. So
more competition was coming into the market. Okay. And then the Russians that you hired went on to throw the election in 2016.
They tried.
So we won't talk about that. So anyway, the next thing, what did you move on to? You were looking for something that you were more passionate about. What did that turn out to be?
So at that point, I was just working in JOB, waiting for the next thing. I had looked into a couple different industries, and I hadn't found anything that I was that just tickled my fancy. And then I had a friend who had always been in real estate. He had mentioned that West Michigan was going well, and that there was a company out in West Michigan that was just starting, and that they needed someone to basically create the systems, and that's what I'm good at. And I've always been interested in real estate. I knew the passive income capability of real estate. I'd read all the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. I'd purchased the cash flow game when I was in college, and so I knew about the industry. I knew I wanted to get into it. I had always put that off as something I'd do later in life, but I figured, why not? A good plan violently executed now is better than a great plan or a perfect plan next week.
Say that again, because it bears repeating. A good plan.
A good plan violently executed today is...
Are you saying violent?
Violently executed.
Violently executed.
I mean, you have to go at it. A good plan done today.
So people must die in order to...
Well, it's a quote from General Patton.
Okay, so there you go. There you go, violently.
Violently executed today is better than a perfect plan next week. Mm-hmm. So I saw an opportunity. I've got a wonderful wife who let me rip her and her 2 kids out of Colorado, and we moved here to Michigan.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. I'd also like to tell you about Joshua Schaub and his team at Icon Realty Group, a full-service real estate company in the West Michigan area. Joshua has been a guest on this show several times, and he and his team at Icon Realty Group help buyers gain an edge in this competitive market. They assist sellers in getting the best price and terms for their properties, and they work with investors to understand the numbers, neighborhoods, and market forces that will set them up for long-term success. To learn more and get a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Joshua at 616-216-2000 or visit theiconrealtygroup.com. Here you come to Michigan with your big city fancy ideas about SEO and systems and everything. How did you specifically apply that to West Shore Property Management?
That was interesting because West Shore is focused in the Muskegon area. So not only are we in the Rust Belt union mentality, but we're also in small town. So the idea of it's not my job or I'm not supposed to do this is prevalent. West Shore was a brand new company, luckily. But what had happened was there was an old property manager who had not been doing what he was supposed to do. He was getting ready to go out of business. A couple of the local landlords got together, and one in particular decided that he was going to step up and manage for all of the property owners.
So one of the clients of this management company said, "You know what? I'm just going to
take
take over.
I'm going to take everything." So he started a new company.
Mm-hmm.
We called all of the old owners and said, we're starting a new company. This old company is going to be defunct in the next month. You're welcome to come with us or make your own arrangements. So we started over from scratch, but with a large portfolio that had been mismanaged for years.
Okay, so that's quite a challenge. It's not just a matter of bringing a system to a business. It's a matter of saving a business that is on the brink of failure.
Yeah, portfolio.
Portfolio.
Yeah, the real estate was on the brink of failure, a brand new business, and we had to take the current portfolio and the current systems that were in place and completely revitalize them. And I'm not, as we talked earlier, I'm not a kid that knows real estate. I'm not a guru who came in from another property management company and knew what to do. I'm a guy who understands how to create a passive system, how to create systems, and I wanted to come in here and learn the real estate. So for the first month or two, I just sat and watched and talked to every single person. Once again, you walk through how a property manager is doing their job. You walk through and you break down their job into individual tasks, and you process map what they're doing on a daily basis. Every time they leave their desk, where they're going, what they're doing, what paperwork's being filed, where it's going through. We found huge redundancies. We were able to outsource massive portions of their day-to-day tasks. Perfect example, they were taking all the maintenance calls in the maintenance department. Well, that takes inordinate amount of time. You have phone lines full. No one can get in. You can't get people who want to rent new apartments to call in. So we found a answering service that does nothing but answer real estate phone calls, and they were able to take all the maintenance calls. And that company also inputs all the information and the maintenance calls into our property management software.
What do you use?
We use Appfolio. The old company
familiar
didn't, so that was the first thing I did, is try and find a new software that did everything we wanted to do. And Appfolio isn't the most flexible of the systems, but it only has one way to do something and you can't mess it up. So it's a great system to put into play, and it has all of the features that you'd want as a property manager.
And it's interesting you say that's the first thing you did was figure out a new software. Mm-hmm. So obviously the software is a key part of the system.
Yep. With today's technology and the ability to go onto the cloud and to, once again, if you're trying to systemize things, you need a system in play. You need a communication tool. If you're going to get your employees to do things in a certain way, they have to be able to communicate with each other. They have to have the information to be able to make those decisions. And if you have the wrong tools, nothing you can teach your employees is going to work. If, as a manager, your job is not to kick people off the bus, most of the time you've got A players, they're just in the wrong seat. They're being told to do the wrong things. They don't have the tools. So if you can find the way to take that system and give them the flexibility and the ability to do their jobs, but within a system that makes sense, where they have all those tools and the communication is there, they will take care of 99% of the stuff without having to come to you. Where before, last owner and last manager was the bottleneck. Everything had to be run through that person.
Yeah. So give me some more examples then of how the system, how you were able to change the way things were operating at West Shore Property Management by bringing a system to it.
Okay. One of the biggest ones was, personally, if there are incentives that don't line up with the owner, you're going to get results that don't line up with what the owner wants. We, as a property management company, are not owned by someone who wants to own a property management company. We have a real estate investor who couldn't find a good property management company in the area and said, I'm just going to do it. And he hired a manager to come in and create these systems with the understanding that the reason I was going to be here was to buy real estate myself. So I was able to create a system that tried to align the incentives of the company with the incentives of the investor. So perfect example, there used to be in-house maintenance. When you have in-house maintenance, you might be able to save a few dollars because you're paying an hourly wage. But you also have the administrative hassle of following the maintenance crew, making sure they're doing it right, making sure they get everything done. Then if someone comes to you with a problem, I don't think they did this right, it's you that didn't do it right. There's the incentive for a management company to say, well, we did do it right. This is a new issue. Or you have a guy who's getting paid an hourly wage and you don't have anything for him to do. So you just go send him to go find something to do, which once again doesn't line the incentives up. Or even worse, you've got an hourly guy and he's not good at this one type of, if he's not good at plumbing, but you've got him paid hourly and your plumbers cost more. So you go and send your guy who's not a plumber to go do plumbing work. There's just so much conflict of interest there. As a investor myself, as well as the owner of West Shore, Greg Wilkinson, who's an investor in the area, that we wanted to immediately separate ourselves from the maintenance. So we got rid of our maintenance team and we went to purely going on subcontractors, which means if there's something that goes wrong, we can go after the subcontractor because it's not us. We didn't make the mistake. We can actually be on the owner's side. While that might not seem like a lot, the amount of maintenance that actually gets fixed and done the right way has increased, which means that the amount of properties that we actually have to go out and maintain has gone down. The first year, we were able to reduce our maintenance cost by 11.86%.
And that transfers to the
straight to the clients.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that was basically that, and I'm sure that all fits into your system of having a call center answer your maintenance calls.
Yep.
So a totally separate phone number to call for maintenance. It goes into the system. How does it get out to the subcontractors?
We're able to then create a list, a priority list. If anything's high priority, the outsourced techs actually call the vendor on record. If it's a low priority call, it gets put into our office, and we have a maintenance coordinator who's in charge of making sure the work's done and is done right. And they'll assign someone the low priority calls based off of need and based off finding out whether it's something that actually needs to be done or if it's just a complaint, not really something that needs to be fixed.
Right. Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. What else? What other efficiencies did you bring through the system?
The accounting as well. There were redundancies in where the accounting was going on, as well as Michigan is one of the only states that allows you to run your property management's business accounting in the same bank account as your owner's money. In most states, that's actually called commingling, and that's illegal. It's not illegal in Michigan. So regardless of that, I immediately separated that, because if enough states have come down and said this is something that's illegal, once again, there's incentives in play. You should never allow your money to commingle with the owner's money. So things like that, where we are able to, because we separated out, you now had a clearer picture of how much money is in the bank, what's going where, and you also have the heightened responsibility of being more responsible with your money, which is how a lot of property managers get in trouble, because property managers, in order to have a property management company, you have to have a real estate brokerage. To me, that's like giving a used car salesman the keys, the wallet, and saying, hey, go pick me a car. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So being able to separate the accounting systems out and then outsourcing the accounting instead of trying to do the bookkeeping in-house, we've outsourced the accounting. We've outsourced the maintenance. We've outsourced the maintenance calls. We've improved the software that we're using. And then we have sat down and defined what each of the employees are supposed to be doing, at which point we were able to find that there were multiple employees that weren't working 40 hours. And so we were able to combine jobs as well as increase the number of units that we're bringing in without hiring extra employees, where before, if we just brought in another 100 units, we would have had to hire more people because everyone was so stuck on, this is just my job. So when you cross-train people, you're able to take on a larger amount of work with fewer employees.
And how like with leasing, what were some of the things you did to change the leasing system?
Our leasing was actually pretty well done. Other than what we've done now is, once again with our software, we've moved everything electronically. So instead of having huge piles of paper and making sure it's printed and done right and having to go look for it, and if there's a dispute, having to go into the filing room and find where this information is, and realizing you didn't check the right box and now you've got a lease that doesn't perform the way you want it to, we put it all online. With it online, the tenants are able to sign from anywhere, and the records are kept in the system and there for anyone to see anytime you want, which goes all the way from leasing through the eviction process, where when you have the information where you need it, everything goes smoothly.
So you've gone paperless.
As much as we can.
So let's talk about you as a passive income strategist. Is that part of what you do and how you see yourself as a passive income strategist?
So on the personal side, I came out, this was 2015, came out to work with West Shore, and I purchased one property. Just to say that, once again, a good plan right now. I'm out here to buy properties. I went out and bought a property, paid cash for it, and it was running. I then put it in West Shore to make sure that I didn't have to run the property.
Single family
property, just one unit.
What'd you pay for it?
I paid $16,000, and I put $4,000 into it for a new roof and a new furnace, and it's rented for $650 a month.
Wow.
Has had the same tenant since I bought it.
Wow. So that's $20,000 all in, and you're getting $650 a month.
Nope. And like I said, we're going on our third year, same tenant. So it was a great deal. But as the manager of West Shore, I saw what the biggest failing with most of my owners are. They don't run businesses. They happen to invest in real estate, but they don't run a real estate business. And that causes huge problems, because if you have one property and there is a problem on your property, you lose 100% of the rents. If you have a big issue, not only do you lose 100% of the rents, but you now have a huge expense and no cash flow to cover it. So I immediately, once again, it's all about passive. How can I create passive income and how can I help others create passive income? I wanted to partner with people and find a way where they could take advantage of having a multi-unit portfolio without having to have necessarily the cash to do so. So I started a real estate syndication. We brought in about 20 investors over a year period. We raised about $400,000 and we purchased 26 units. With those 26 units, my 1 unit property, I pay on a 1 unit $700 a month or a year in insurance. When you have a multi-family or multi-unit portfolio like that, with 26 units, we're paying $300 a year. When you have...
So you get an economy of scale. You have like a balloon insurance policy that covers everything.
You've got something that covers all of your properties together. The ability to combine those 26 units means that if my one property goes vacant, I still have 25 units paying in. If there's a roof that needs to be done, there's 25 units that cover it. So with passive income, I've been able to take these 20 investors. They've been able to give me their money. I've purchased their properties. We've gotten great deals on them. And they've not had to do anything but receive a quarterly report.
So you bought 24 single-family homes. Or were some of them multifamily?
We bought a bunch of single family. We bought a duplex, and then we bought a 11 unit mixed use commercial and residential, 8 residential, 3 commercial.
Okay. So what was the average price you were paying per door? What was it similar to your first property?
Similar to that.
So 20, 25,000 all in per door?
20, 25,000 with obviously the economies of scale. The 11 unit complex that we bought was $45,000, needs about 30 grand worth of work into it.
Okay. This is an interesting syndication because I've syndicated 3 deals, and it's always, I identify the property, get it under contract, go out, raise the money for it. But it sounds like what you did is more of a blind pool where you said, we're going to go buy a bunch of properties, let's raise the money, and then we'll determine what those properties are. Is that correct?
Warren Buffett says be a contrarian investor. If you go to any of your local real estate events, you'll have 20 people stand up and say they are wholesalers. They're out looking for deals. You have maybe 1 or 2 people saying, I have money. So once again, I'm not a real estate guy. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. But I went out and said, you know what? If there's deals already out there, I'll find the money first and the deals will follow. So I raised the 400 grand as a blind fund, and as a property manager, as someone who's in the industry all the time, deals just come to me. I mean, amazing deals. We've got one. We bought an $80,000 house for $12,000. We sold it on land contract to the lady that we bought it from for $20,000. And she's going to either pay us back within a year, or we're going to take the house and make 80 grand on $12,000. Wow. The deals just walk into our door. I bought an 11 unit complex for $45,000. That's $4 grand a unit. Needed next to no work. Already had tenants in some of the units. It's in a rougher neighborhood, but once again, if my investors aren't taking the phone calls, aren't dealing with the people, they just care if a check walks in.
They're completely passive and silent.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of returns are your investors getting?
We're in the growth phase right now. So we purchased as much as we physically could, including a bunch of stuff that needed rehab work. So the cash on cash returns have been 1-2% a year. Mm-hmm. Internally, the returns are looking amazing. As an example, we bought one property for $20,000 on Superior in Muskegon. That property we rented for a year. We made $2,400 profit. At the end of this year, we sold it and we made $6,000 on selling it. So we've got $8,000. So that's, I think, 42% on their money, and then we're taking that money and rolling it over into some of these rehabs. That, as an example, that 11 unit, once it's all done, we're projecting 40% on our money if nothing goes wrong, 40% on our money a year. Now, we tell our investors 8%, anything better than that, you're lucky. But internally, we don't buy anything if we don't see a 20% return on our money yearly over a 5-year period.
Wow. Okay. So, but it's early, so you don't.
It's early.
Yeah, you're in growth phase.
We're in
You're
growth
still
phase.
enacting
There's not
the
cash.
strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to do another fund like this, or what's the plan?
Yes, definitely. I need to come up with the details. Obviously, I've learned a lot from doing this first one, so I've got to figure out exactly what I want to do with the next one. I'm thinking about going a little bit larger, so I need to get all my ducks in a row and start raising capital.
Yeah. So, what were some of the lessons you learned from doing your first syndication?
Everything costs more and takes longer than you plan. Everything. I mean, it's life, especially when you're in a low income environment. The cash flow's there. The properties are going to make it, but you have to plan for that extra expense that's going to be coming in. Secondly, I would say you need to buy large amounts of units. The more properties you have, the more stable you're going to be, especially when you have someone else's money. Trying to explain to someone else, when we were first in the game and we only had 3 or 4 units, trying to explain to someone why there's no money coming in, that's hard. I mean, obviously they trust me, they've given me their money, but to not be able to show the movement is hard when you're first starting. So I would say the biggest thing that I've learned is I want to raise enough to immediately go out and buy a larger, either apartment complex or a larger number of units, so you can show immediate progression.
Mm-hmm. So your next syndication, then, what do you picture it to be? Like, how much do you think you'll raise, and what do you think the minimum investment will be?
I'm not sure about minimum investment yet, but I'm looking for $1 to $5 million probably in the next round.
Okay, and you see the opportunity then in Muskegon or West Michigan to pick up the type of properties that.
Yes. Muskegon particularly is where Grand Rapids was 5 years ago. You can see that prices are rising, rents are rising, but it's been neglected for so long that there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be repaired. There's a lot of houses that need work going into them. So currently the market is a very hot market.
Do you think you'll do another blind pool where you go after, single families and multifamilies and maybe an 11 unit, or are you going to go after a larger multifamily and apartment?
I'll probably do both. As I said, there's enough time in the day when you're organizing to get into a lot of things. I've got several other investments as well, and they're going well.
So let's switch gears here and talk about Dave Ramsey.
All right.
Because you told me off mic that you're a big Dave Ramsey fan. Mm-hmm. But yet you flagrantly violate all of his principles. That's my words, not yours. Let's talk about that. Like, why are you a big Dave? Because there's always that push and pull between Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki. Let's argue that for a few minutes here. Why Dave Ramsey? So
in college, I had read everything Rich Dad Poor Dad had said, all the Robert Kiyosaki stuff. And I saw a lot of people in 2008 lose everything. So I personally got completely out of debt. And me and my wife have an emergency fund, and we do not spend things that we don't have. We pay for everything up front. We've got a vacation coming up next year for our 10th anniversary, and we've been saving for it for 8 years. So we do not use personal debt. Now, once you get into business, these returns I was telling you, this 20, 40% on these properties that are paid for in cash in this first syndication, if I were to leverage them, those returns would be double, triple that amount. And you could have, instead of 20 properties, you could have 60, 70, 80 properties, which would allow you to remove even more risk. Because if you do have a problem on one or two of these properties, when you have the backing of another 30, 40, 50, 60 properties, you're not going to feel that pain. It might be uncomfortable. You're not going to get as good of a return that quarter, but the sheer number, the economies of scales, actually, that too big to fail is a thing. You get to a point where as long as you're not mismanaging what you're doing and you're putting the appropriate reserves away, then the stuff that comes up, if it's large enough, is going to be covered by insurance. So the cash flow covers everything. I would rather own 10% of 100 deals than 100% of 10 deals. So when I above and beyond this investment, I got involved with a real estate investor in the area, and we purchased a 11-unit apartment complex. We were able to buy that thing fully rented at 11 units, all at $325 a month. He hadn't raised the rents in 20 years.
Wow. So that's what he was charging, was $325 per door. Wow.
Per door. He hadn't raised the rents in 20 years. So we were able to buy it for $160,000.
1990 rents.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So he sold it to us for $160,000. The thing's worth easily $300,000. So we bought it for $160,000 cash, and then we went to a bank and refinanced it, and we got our full $160,000 of cash back.
Wow. So, okay, right there. So you did the Dave Ramsey thing to start with. You paid all cash for it. But then you went and refinanced it and paid yourself back, but now you're using leverage. Doesn't that bother you?
You could get me to go into $1 million of debt before I would go into $10,000 of debt. Because once again, if I had took out $160,000 on a single family, I'm banking on that one family not getting fired, not getting a divorce, not trashing my property, not doing drugs, whatever it is. I'm banking on that one person to take care of me. With an 11-unit apartment, I'm banking on the fact that on most months, most of my people will be okay. I've got 11. I know that one of them is going to have one of those problems, but I've got 10 others that are going to pay my mortgage for me.
Yeah, as long as it's managed correctly.
As long as it's managed correctly.
It really comes down to management and the money that you have to put into it to keep it operating efficiently.
And not just managed from a property manager sense, but from the business sense. In large commercial, they require you to put a per door reserve into a fund to take care of these big expenses that are going to come up. If you've got single family properties or you have multifamily, it doesn't matter. Those expenses are going to come. Everyone needs to look at their investment portfolio as an investment company, and you need to have cash reserves. You need to pull money back. You need to understand that you might have gotten 12% on your money cash, but if you go and spend that, what happens next month when there's a water heater that goes out? You have to not just manage the property, but you have to manage your business.
Yeah, don't milk it and kill it, but really take good care of it.
That's where I buy most of my properties, are landlords who, if they don't fix something or if they duct tape fix it, that's an extra dollar they get to put in their pocket. So they get to a point where you've done that long enough where you can't afford the upkeep and the fix.
Right.
And so then you've got this property that you've babied for 10 years, and then you come to me and you sell it to me for what you paid for it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because you didn't, not because you didn't do well on the property, not because you didn't make cash flow along the way, but because you didn't manage the business. You didn't see the 10-year plan, the 30-year plan. You didn't look at your exit strategy. So, perfect example, we have a 55-unit package, single family and duplexes. The owner didn't plan on an exit strategy. He did not have a way to get out of his property, so he tried selling to his daughter. It didn't work. She didn't take care of the property, so he had to take it back. He then tried selling it to his son. Didn't take care of it. Didn't manage the business of it. The houses are in good shape. He fixed everything, but he had he had high occupancy but low collection rates. And so he couldn't afford to pay his dad for what he'd paid. So once again, his dad takes it. So now his dad has this great portfolio, 55 units that he has worked his entire life building. And because he didn't plan the business and because his children didn't work on it like a business, He went ahead and sold it to me and a couple investors for $1 million when it's worth, I mean, if you split it up, 1.5, 1.6 on a land contract for less than $100,000 down.
Wow.
Because what do you do? I mean, when you don't have the funds, you no longer have your security deposits because you mismanaged it. You no longer have the rents coming in to be able to pay the taxes and insurance and everything because you haven't taken care of the business. You can have something that you've worked years for, and just not taking care of the business side of things can tank it. And then an investor comes in and makes a great deal, and we're planning on flipping that next year for probably 2.3.
Good for you. That's a hell of a deal. And getting back to Dave Ramsey, so yeah, Dave Ramsey, it seems, would encourage put money back into the property. If you're going to invest like that, take care of your property, run it like a business, put money back into it before you put it in your pocket. But I think the distinction that I like to make with Dave Ramsey, I agree with his position for most people. You know, for most people, yes, it's a good idea to own your home free and clear. It's a good idea. Absolutely, you should be staying out of debt. But I think that when you become a sophisticated investor who's investing in commercial, multifamily, or any type of commercial property, that's when his advice may stop working. And in your case, you realize the power of leverage, smart leverage with your 11 unit to basically pay yourself back. So you now have no money in this property, and your return is infinite.
I love Dave Ramsey. I think everyone should personally get out of personal debt and consumer debt. But once you get into business and once you understand how to run it like a business, that's the important part. Because if you're a landlord who owns 2 or 3 properties and you're using that money to live, and then you go and leverage it to do more, you're going to run into issues because you're going to have that time when you need to get a capital call and you don't have the cash because you didn't run it like a business. If you go out and get a 100-unit apartment complex and you understand that you're putting $350 a door away every year for a reserve, and you purchased it with a cash reserve in place because you knew these things were coming up, when something happens, you don't have a capital call. You just don't take a return because you're not living off of this. And there's a huge difference between an investor, someone who has businesses working for them, and sometimes their investments make good money and sometimes they don't. It just depends on what's going on that year, versus a self-employed landlord who is, living off of this income on a day-to-day. If you're a landlord, don't use leverage. You're going to find yourself up a creek at some point, and I'm going to buy your properties. If you're going to run it like a business, if you're going to put the systems in place, leverage can be very powerful.
Yeah. So if you're sophisticated, you've reached, and you own multifamily commercial property, chances are you've reached a certain level where the Dave Ramsey rules just don't apply to you anymore. You're playing on a different field now. So just keep that in mind, because I've talked to commercial investors who are like, well, we've got to pay cash for this because of Dave Ramsey. I'm like, no, you don't. You're never going to buy anything if you're trying to pay cash for a commercial property. You need to use smart leverage. And
not to pick at Dave Ramsey, but land contracts as an example, which are really big in Michigan. I'd never heard about them out west. But in Michigan, you can seller financing, get a land contract. Dave Ramsey advocates on his radio station that if you want to buy a business, you go to the business owner and say, hey, why don't I pay you based off of the profits over the next 5-10 years? He advocates that. When you go to the bank, they're a lot less flexible. So once again, there's another method where he understands that there are situations where it makes sense to make payments on things. There's no difference in real estate if it's run like a business in between a commercial loan and a land contract. So I would say that while publicly, that's where he makes his money. And so because of that, he probably can't do it himself. But I think if you got him in a room, he'd say, yeah.
Airbnb motel in Whitehall. That's interesting. How's that working for you?
Very well. Once again, I see a plan. It's a good plan. Just violently execute it. At the RPOA conference last year, we had a lady come out and talk about Airbnb. I had found a 10-unit or 11-unit old motel that I had just purchased on a land contract, and we were planning on just running it as a 11 unit apartment complex in Whitehall. I went to the RPOA. They had that speaker speak on Airbnb, and she made a couple points that really hit me. The less time someone spends in your property, the more they treat it like a guest. These are very small units. So if we're going to run this as a apartment, it's going to be low income tenants who are going to, run the units very rough. I wasn't interested in that. So I figured if we would try the Airbnb, we'd just try it out, see how it would go. But if they would really treat the property better than what the other tenants would, even if we just broke even on how much cash flow came in, we'd be ahead because there wouldn't be the maintenance. Walking in, because I deal a lot in some low income neighborhoods, but walking into a 125 square foot unit, 200 square foot unit, and having it be swept with the bed made at the end of a stay versus walking into a unit where they have, there's cat feces on the ground and they haven't taken the garbage out in months, and then they purposely did damage because you're evicting them. It's amazing. And on top of that, when you're renting out these units at $60 a day instead of $400, $500 a month, the return is very nice. We haven't gone through a winter yet, so we're going to see how winter is in Whitehall for guests. But so far, as long as things stay the way they're going, we're going to probably make 2 or 3 times what we would make on a rental as an Airbnb.
Wow. How did the summer go for you? What kind of occupancy did you have?
Almost 100%.
Really? Is this right on the lake?
It's not right on the lake. We are 3 blocks from the lake, but so we're right downtown. We're on their downtown strip. We're within walking distance of everything.
Really? What a great find then. How did you systematize that then? Because I'd imagine that it's a lot more labor intensive, or at least you have to have someone over there to clean it every time someone moves out or change the sheets or whatever.
My brother was looking to house hack, so he invested in that property with us. So he's there on site, and they do the cleaning currently because we're still doing the rehab work. But as far as systems go, we purchase smart locks, which means when a tenant goes to Airbnb, that's the first step. We got involved with Airbnb. Airbnb finds the guest, collects the money, and schedules it in our calendar. Our smart locks connect directly to Airbnb. They send a message to the tenant, tell you, here's your phone app. Now you can get in. So it's a self-check-in. So there's no one to show. You don't have to be there. There's no one there to take care of it. Because it's an Airbnb community as well, it's not like a hotel or a motel. They don't expect daily cleans. You only clean in between tenants. They also don't expect the same level of concierge. They're expecting a really nice, clean, pretty place. So we've got a system that goes out and finds them, puts them in, gives them keys, and then we only have to clean every time they leave. Once we have all 10 units, because we have 3 of them up right now, once we have the rest finished, because we're weekend warrioring this one, we will then hire a lady to come and clean every day, and she'll take care of it. At which point there is, other than making sure, once again, that the systems don't fail, everything's done for us.
Wow. So you're weekend warrioring it, which means you've got, there's 12 units?
There's 11 units in that one.
11 units. You've got 3 up and running. You're rehabbing the others. And it's not just rehabbing them, but you also have to furnish them.
Correct.
It seems like it's a little more expensive in that you probably have to have cable and internet for each unit.
Not cable, but high-speed internet with Netflix and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so they get Netflix. Mm-hmm. Does that mean you're paying for Netflix and high-speed internet for each unit, or did you manage to figure out a way to do it for the entire building?
Not for the entire building, but not quite for each unit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very cool. That's an interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out for you.
We're very excited. It's been a lot of fun, and then, like I said, next year it should be on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. When did you close on it, and when do you plan on having it fully operational?
We closed on it in April. My brother moved out to do the labor on it, and then he was filming for a Discovery Channel show for a couple weeks, or actually it took more than a month or so. So the summer we were kind of out of operations, so we're planning on being ready for next season.
It's totally unrelated. The Discovery Channel show, is it totally unrelated to the real estate, or is there some connection there?
A little. He's a primitive survivalist, and so they had a group of people go out and who could build the best primitive shelters in less than a week, and had it filmed for the Discovery Channel, or it might have been 2 weeks, but competition that's going to be coming out sometime this year or next year about who can build the best primitive shelters the quickest.
Best what?
Primitive shelters.
Primitive shelters. Mm-hmm. Do they build them violently?
And quickly.
So as we wrap it up here, Gary, I know you've got a good horror story that you want to share. So what happened?
All right. So the most embarrassing group I've been in, as I said, I'm really big in partnerships and working with people. I've successfully put together 3 or 4 different investments with multiple different investors, and they've always worked out very well. I've got one right now where I was playing with money I didn't have yet. A deal was supposed to close. I was supposed to have funds come available. And I also found a deal, a 4-unit for $30,000 right next to another 4-unit that's listed at $90,000. It was a little rough around the edges. We knew it would need some work, but it was no-brainer. It's a 4-unit. It's going to be bringing in, it was under rented. It should be bringing in about $2,000 a month. There was a guy here in Grand Rapids that I've been trying to partner up with for a while. He's a great guy. He's been wanting to do stuff out in Muskegon. I brought him this deal, told him I'd be able to invest with him as soon as this deal closed. He was really excited, so he purchased it himself and said, once we've got the money closed, we'll join together. So my first mistake was playing with money I didn't have yet. So that deal never closed. So I haven't been able to partner with him, so he now owns the property himself. Then above and beyond that, I have never seen a property, the money pit.
Oh, yeah.
I have never seen a property with so many problems in my life. This had a COC. It was rented.
COC,
Certificate of Compliance with the city. So within the last 4 years, it had been up to code. It was rented. There were people in it. How bad could it be? Everything we tried fixing just showed another underlying problem. And you pull up the floors to put a nicer floor down, and there was a fire at some point where it looks like someone for heat had just decided to burn down half the house right in the living room. Everything you could imagine that could be broken in the house has been broken. And it's been a constant trickle of problems. So instead of being able, there's a problem, we can fix it, there's been a problem, and then another problem, and then another problem, and then another problem. We have been able to up the rents. We're sitting close to the $2,000 that we had talked about. The property is worth $90 now. We've replaced roofs. We've made it look really nice. It's a good investment, but playing with the money I didn't have, promising to get in bed with an investor that I couldn't, and then having to own that it just wasn't a deal that worked out the way we wanted it to. It's probably the most embarrassing moment I've had as someone who's trying to be a syndicator, someone who's trying to bring money together and get partners, to just fail on my end. The property is going to work out, whether he sells it now and makes a profit or whether he keeps it and turns a profit in the long run, it'll be fine. But it's probably the worst thing I've done as an investor so far.
Well, that's a great warning to anybody investing in real estate. I mean, you always go in hoping for the best, but sometimes you get nothing but the worst. so be aware of that. I mean, that's a great warning to share. What other advice do you have for investors out there who are looking to get passive income and
get your team together. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to do everything yourself. Find a property manager, find a real estate agent, find your tax attorney, your accountant, whatever it takes. Get the people around you and build the systems where they're doing the work for you. You can always grow. There's always a way where you can do the next thing, where you can 10x. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I'm not a real estate guru. 3 years ago, I had only owned one property in my life. In 2015, I purchased one property. In 2016, I purchased 13 properties. In 2017, I purchased 93. It's based off of having a good team in place and people bringing me those deals, people protecting me because my job is to pay them. If you'll remove yourself as the obstacle, know what you're good at, and then just go out and do it. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait for the perfect deal. Violently execute your good plan today, and tomorrow will be great.
Fantastic advice. How would people get a hold of you?
You can contact me at West Shore Property Management. West